So today's video is going to be another video for Autism Acceptance Month, which is in April. That's why I'm posting in April. And today's video is going to be a video all about special interests, which is something that a lot of autistic people experience. People who are not autistic can also experience it. But yeah, I just thought I would make this video about special interests because I'm autistic, and yeah, I just thought it was an interesting subject to talk about. And yeah, I'm sorry if I sound like really nervous while filming this because my anxiety today is quite high and I'm just trying to push through it. So yeah, if you can hear like how anxious I am from my voice, I'm really sorry for that. I'm trying to hide it, but it's not really working that well. So yeah, so first I'm gonna explain a bit about like what special interests like are actually, in case you don't know yet. And basically special interests are like an intense focus on a specific thing that can last days, weeks, months, years, basically any time period. And usually when one special interest leaves, another one takes its place. So you're basically almost never without a special interest, which I personally find very interesting because I'm someone who struggles a lot with my mental health, like depression and anxiety, as I just mentioned earlier. And for me, it's very difficult to tell what are my special interests because I don't really experience like a lot of joy, so I can't really differentiate what is a special interest and what is just like a hobby because I don't really feel a lot of joy in general. So most of the time I don't really experience a very intense feeling of like joy when it comes to a specific subject. So yeah, it's very difficult for me to gauge whether or not something is a special interest of mine. But in today's video I am gonna like talk about my special interests as well, but obviously, like I just said, I don't know if they are my special interests because when I was younger it was a lot easier for me to tell what was a special interest and what wasn't. Even before I got diagnosed with autism, back then I could still tell that I liked things a lot more than other people. So yeah, I can tell what my like previous special interests have been, especially when I was like a child, but the ones I have now are a bit more difficult for me to tell because again, I am very, very depressed, and yeah, it's very difficult for me to tell what is a special interest. So yeah, so first of all, I'm going to talk a bit about the special interests that I used to have. I'm not going to really name them like specifically because like they're like very niche like subjects, and a lot of people will not even know them because a lot of them are very much like because they were a thing in my country, and not every single person that watches my videos is from my country. So I'm not really going to mention the specific things, but I am going to mention kind of like the category that they belong to. For example, the first category was like TV shows. The main one that I had when I was quite young, I would say like 9 to 10 years old, and I had this for multiple years. This like special interest was a specific TV show that was again very much like from my country, so I'm not going to mention which one because nobody's interested in that anyway. But basically like everyone in my class was like very interested in this show, and so I didn't really see it as something that was like very like out of the ordinary. Like a lot of my special interests from when I was younger were very much like considered normal. Like for example, one of the other special interests that I had was Disney Channel, specifically like those shows that were on Disney Channel, like the Jonas Brothers. I don't actually remember what show they were on because it was not called the Jonas Brothers, but I don't remember what the show was called, but the show that had them on it, and the show that like Demi Lovato was also on, and like Hannah Montana, like stuff like that was a special interest of mine. I would watch a lot of those shows like over and over and over again, and nobody really thought that that was weird that I was so interested in these shows. And again, the show that I was like obsessed with before like Disney Channel, like nobody really thought that that was weird because everyone around me was so like in love with these shows. But I feel like that's kind of like one of the reasons why like girls get so like underdiagnosed with autism, because again, our special interests are so like seemingly like very normal and everyone has them, so it doesn't really get seen as like a special interest. It just gets seen as like something that they're obsessed with. And especially if they're like things like the Jonas Brothers, for example, people don't really see that as like a special interest. They just see that as like a girl liking guys, which, I mean, sure, for some people it might be like that, but I feel like most people are not gonna like watch the same episodes like over and over and over again in the way that I used to. And yeah, again, I feel like because these like special interests are so like normal seeming and a lot of people are like obsessed with these things, not every single person is obsessed with this is obviously going to be autistic. So because of that, like a lot of people just don't really get diagnosed because of that. Obviously also because like a lot of like the time that I showed like autistic traits when I was in school still, especially when I was quite young, would just get like written off as me being very shy and quiet, which I am quite shy and quiet, but I feel like there's definitely like a difference between me being shy and quiet in class and me literally being like selectively mute and not being able to talk in class, because that was one of the settings that made me almost completely mute. And yeah, again, I don't really think it's the exact same thing. And yeah, again, like a lot of my other special interests that I had when I was younger, like reading, for example, that has been a special interest for quite a while, as people can probably see from all the books behind me. Like, that has been like my main special interest, I feel like. Again, it's quite difficult to tell if it's still a special interest now, because my depression makes it very difficult to experience a lot of the joy that comes with special interests. So I don't know if it's still like a special interest to me reading or if it's just a hobby. I can't really tell. But yeah, that's been like one of my main special interests. Again, if it's still a special interest. The other one would be like fashion. I used to be way more into like designing clothes than I am now. I used to actually go to school for like designing clothes, and like being told every single day that your designs are absolutely horrible because you couldn't get like the correct measurements for everything, because you have like a learning disorder that stops you from being able to do stuff like that, like math in general. And then also having to like design a lot of the clothes for yourself and having to like measure yourself like every single week basically, and seeing your body change because you went to this school when you were literally a teenager. And yeah, that didn't do good things for my mental health at all. So I stopped going there and I went to a completely different school. But yeah, that kind of completely like took away my special interest in like designing clothes that I had since I was like 7. So that's great. School can do wonderful things for you, but yeah, I feel like my main special interest when it comes to like clothing now is just like outfits in general, and seeing how other people make outfits and wearing cute clothing, stuff like that. Like, I don't think designing clothes is a special interest anymore because I haven't done it in literal years, so I think that one's gone. But I think fashion in general is still kind of a special interest, in the sense of like I really like dressing up and I find a lot of joy in it. So yeah, like I already said, a lot of these special interests that I still have now are very difficult for me to be able to tell if they're still special interests because of my depression. But I feel like my special interests right now are mainly like reading and like clothes and stuff like that. And I'm actually gonna like hold up a couple things while I talk about my special interests now, because I went through like the effort of like taking things that are my special interest and like putting them on my bed so I could show them, and I haven't done that yet, so I'm gonna do that while I talk about them, otherwise I did it for nothing. So yeah, so the first special interest of mine that I think I have right now at least is Squishmallows. Now I kind of view these as like a replacement for a lot of these stuffed animals that my parents threw away when I was like, I think 14, and they told me that I was too old to have stuffed animals, which I was very sad about because I loved all of them a lot. But yeah, I don't know if that was a special interest of mine back then, like stuffed animals, but I think these are. If I lived in a place like America where they sell these like way more, I would have a lot of them already. I don't really have that many now. I have like 10, I think, and this is obviously one of them. I think that they're just like very cute, and again, I really like stuffed animals, especially nowadays. I'm trying to buy like stuffed animals for myself again because I feel like it's a way of like healing my inner child in a way. So yeah, I really like these like squishmallows. I think they're really cute. If they were more like readily available where I live, I would have way more of them. And recently I actually saw that they made like fuzzy versions of these. And they're basically called like fuzzy mallows, I think. And yeah, I really want those, which I feel like that's kind of like a way for me to indicate that it's like a special interest, because I look at people like having those like specific ones that I want, and I'm like, I really want those. So I feel like that's a good way to indicate that it's like a special interest for me. So yeah, I feel like with a lot of these special interests that I'm gonna show, you're really gonna see that I like collecting things, which is, you know, a very normal thing for like a special interest, that if you have the ability and like the money for it, you are gonna collect it, which you are gonna see that like for some of these special interests, I don't really collect things because they are expensive and I don't really have that much money to spare on like special interests. So yeah, I'm very glad that these are like relatively cheap where I live, probably because they're like very old ones and ones that they don't really like sell anymore in America. So like they're very old ones, but I'm still glad that I have some. So yeah, let's move on to the next special interest, because I feel like I've talked about this for quite long. So the next special interest is quite an obvious one, so I don't think I'm going to talk about it for quite as long, but that is reading. Now I'm holding up one of the books I'm currently reading for the second time, and yeah, I feel like from my background it's quite obvious that I really like reading, and it's, I think, still a special interest of mine. Like I said before, I used to also have like a special interest for reading, and yeah, I think a part of me just slowly lost like a little bit of interest in reading when I was like around the age of 12, because people thought it was really weird for me to like reading so much when I was so bad at it, even though I wasn't diagnosed with dyslexia yet. People already could tell, especially like teachers, that I couldn't read fast at all. I think I lost like a little bit of that special interest in reading once they had me like in school. They basically like forced me to read more, even though I was already reading way more than everyone in my class. Because I was like the worst reader in my class, they basically gave you like scores based on how fast you could read like a specific text, and everyone in my class basically scored like above an 8, and I scored like a 3, which is very bad, obviously. And it obviously was because of my dyslexia, but for some reason they didn't even think about potentially getting me tested for it, even though I had a score of 3. So yeah, for some reason I scored like really badly on this test, and I really liked reading, and the teachers just didn't understand how that was possible. So they forced me to read a lot, and I absolutely started like hating reading basically. And I think I only got into reading again because I started reading in a different language, because obviously back then I read in my native language, and at the age that they were doing those testings, we were already kind of like being told that we should learn at least like a little bit of English so that we could be prepared for high school, where we would get at least like one lesson of English every single week. And I realized that I really liked English, even more that I liked my native language and French, way more than French, because I absolutely hate French. I cannot speak it at all, like I really struggle with it. And when I was in high school, you basically get like way more French than you get English. And I was always like one of the people who was like on top of the class when it came to English. Like it was so easy for me to learn, and it was so much fun, and I loved reading in English when I first started. And then in my native language, I was like kind of a bit bad, considering it's literally my native language, which obviously has to do with my dyslexia, and probably the fact that I literally stopped reading in my native language and switched to English. But my French was absolutely horrible. I was always like at the bottom of my class, even though I tried so hard to learn it, and it just never worked. And the fact that like my French teachers were always the worst ones and were always so mean. Probably didn't help either. It probably didn't help. So yeah, long story short, I have always been kind of good in English, and so I feel like I got my special interest, if it's still that, because of, again, the whole thing of me being depressed and not being able to recognize special interests very well. If it is still a special interest, it's definitely now a special interest because of the fact that I'm reading in English. So yeah, I feel like I've talked about this for quite long. I said I was not going to talk about this for too long, but then I started ranting about French. So yeah, let's just move on to the next one. So the next one that I'm going to talk about is also quite visible on my bookshelves, and that is Funko Pops. Now, my special interest is actually not Funko Pops itself, but just like figures of things that I like. And Funko Pops are the only one that are like accessible to me, because other figures are usually quite expensive and I usually cannot afford them, or they're not available anywhere where I live. So Funko Pops it is. This is a Funko Pop that I recently got actually a couple days ago of a Care Bear, which is also like a stuffed animal I actually own too. I recently bought them and I really love them. So yeah, I know a lot of people don't like Funko Pops. I don't love them either. Like, I like them because they're like figures of things that I like, but I wish that I could have like money for stuff like Nendroids, because I really like the way that they look and I like the detail of them way more. But I feel like a lot of people gotta realize that like not everyone has the money for like 300 Nendroids of all their favorite things, whereas I do have the money for a couple of Funko Pops of things that I like, because usually where I live they are quite cheap. So yeah, this is the only thing that I can afford. I wish I could afford like better figures of things I like, but I feel like that's only going to be a dream that I can, make into a reality if I win like the lottery. So yeah, for now it is Funko Pops. Again, that's not my special interest, just like figures of things that I like. So yeah, these are the only ones that are accessible to me. So yeah, let's just move on to the last one that I'm going to talk about. So the last one that I'm going to talk about is actually also visible in the background, but probably not as visible unless you like recognize what it is. But that is music, and specifically like K-pop. I know that a lot of people don't like that, but yeah, I really like K-pop, specifically like BTS. I have a lot of BTS albums, again, in the background. If you don't know what BTS albums look like, you're probably not going to be able to like recognize them. But yeah, the album that I'm actually holding is not a BTS album. It's an ENHYPEN album, but this is the closest album that I could find that was easily like holdable. And it is a group that I recently started liking. I would consider music actually one of my other special interests besides like reading, that I have always pretty much had. And when I was younger, like I already said before, I really liked Disney Channel, and a lot of Disney Channel was obviously also music, because a lot of them could sing. And yeah, I really liked that music when I was younger. I also really liked like a lot of punk bands. I know that's very out of the blue between like K-pop and Disney Channel music and then suddenly punk bands, but yeah, I also used to really like that, and I still listen to that music, but I feel like I really want like a connection to the person. Like, I want to be able to watch like videos of them just like having fun, and I feel like K-pop kind of gives me that, of like just being able to watch them like having fun and like playing games with each other and stuff like that. I feel like it gives me that like satisfaction of like watching people like be friends and make good music together. It kind of gives me that kind of satisfaction that like the Jonas Brothers used to give me, because I'm not a Jonas Brothers fan anymore. I don't really like them anymore. That special interest that I had in them is basically like gone at this point, but I still like a lot of their old music. And again, I feel like part of the appeal to me was not just like the music, obviously, because I would listen to that so much, but also the fact that like they got along quite well. And again, as someone who is autistic and is really bad at making friends and keeping them, and not like accidentally just being really boring and just boring them out of my life, basically. Because of that, I feel like I really like watching people like be really good friends and then making like content, like music that I can like listen to over and over and over again. So yeah, I think that's part of the appeal to me with K-pop as well. I can watch them like be friends and still listen to like very good music of them. So yeah, I'm gonna stop talking about it now because I know that not everyone who's gonna watch this video is like someone who likes K-pop. So yeah, I'm sure that like if another autistic person watches this right now and you don't like K-pop, I'm sure you have like another special interest in music probably, because I feel like that's a very common special interest because it's such like a common thing, music. So yeah, I'm just gonna move on from this because again, I know not a lot of people are interested in this. So let's just wrap up this video because I'm in a lot of pain. So yeah, so I'm in way more pain now than I was in the beginning of this video, but that's normal because I just sat up for like half an hour. So yeah, I hope you guys still enjoyed this video despite it probably not being too interesting, but I thought I would just make a video about like special interests and what mine are like. And yeah, I hope it was at least still like a little bit interesting. I know it wasn't really a video that you could like learn much from, but yeah, I feel like I don't really need to like educate y'all about a lot of stuff. I'm not an education channel. I'm just like a channel that makes videos about anything that I want basically. So yeah, I hope you guys still enjoyed this video despite it being a little bit like different than my other ones. I again hope you guys enjoyed this video, and yeah, bye.